Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Supply Chain Sustainability School Lunch and Learn session on social value from infrastructure projects. I'm Sean McCarthy. I chair the board of the Supply Chain School, and I'm delighted to host today's event. But I'm going to hand over most of the talking to the real experts after the initial introduction, to Joe and to Alison, who will introduce themselves and take you through their perspective on the issues. First of all, just a couple of housekeeping things for you. You will see the chat function down in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Please use that for questions as you go through the session. So what we'll do is we'll ask Joe and Alison to present. As questions occur to you, please feel free to type them in, and then I'll cover those questions on your behalf as we go through the session this afternoon. Please do share your feedback at the end. Feedback on these sessions is really, really important. Within the Supply Chain School, we run around about 250 to 300 events a year, and we continually try to make them better and better as we go along. We're recording today's session, so the recording will be available on the Supply Chain School website, and we'll also be sharing the slides, so there's no need for you to take copious notes. And please do refer those recordings to anybody that you know that's not able to attend today that might benefit from today's session. So this is the agenda for this short session today. We have an hour. I do the welcome and introductions, which are practically over now. Then we're going to hear from Joe Dobson from Useful Projects. Joe has done an amazing report working with the Institution of Civil Engineers on social value in infrastructure projects. Then we're going to hear from Alison Ramsey from Scape to talk about a real life case study. We very much welcome your questions, as we said, and we're happy to take as many questions as we can. If there are any that we can't cover today, then we'd be happy to follow up individually with you. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Joe. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sean. Great to be here, everyone. Thanks for turning up. So, yeah, I'm Joe Dobson. I'm an associate at Useful Projects, and I've been a sustainability consultant in the built environment for about 13 years now, but I've only really got into social value in the last sort of 2 years or so. And what I'm going to share with you today is the findings from a major piece of research all about maximising social value from infrastructure projects. Although it's focused on infrastructure projects, actually a lot of the findings are relevant to the construction industry as a whole. And the research was published at the end of June, so not too long ago. And actually some of the findings are already being sort of taken forward and implemented. The research itself was co-funded by the Institution of Civil Engineers, which is a huge membership body, has more than 95,000 members and really represents the civil engineering sector, and by Useful Projects. And Useful Projects is a sustainability consultancy who's really got a mission to transform the built environment and create social value, cut carbon emissions and address the circular economy. And we're a social enterprise ourselves, so actually our core purpose is all about social value and environmental value creation. So the need for this project really stemmed from the ICE Sustainability Leadership Panel, and they really felt like infrastructure projects can and should do much more to deliver benefits to communities across the UK. And there was a really strong feeling that there was an implementation gap. So there was plenty of organisations who had really strong policy objectives around social value, but they're not really seeing that being translated on the ground. And this research really sought to sort of investigate that implementation gap and develop some recommendations for overcoming it. And with hundreds of billions of pounds of money earmarked for investment in the construction sector over the next 5 years or so, we've got a really huge opportunity here, with only really heightened by the inequalities that have been revealed through the COVID-19 pandemic, that this investment is really going to make sure we address socioeconomic issues as well as deliver the kind of UK's net carbon emissions. So we had a focus on 3 particular areas within the infrastructure sector, so transport, energy and water. And we were looking at the whole life cycle. So what you build, right from the strategic planning, how you build, which is very much about the construction phase, and then how you operate. I mean, so many of the infrastructure assets in our country and over the world, probably about 95% are already in operation. So there's that long-term operation piece to think about as well. And we were really looking at what is the level of understanding across the sector, and what's the current approach? What does best practice look like? What barriers are people facing? What are the implementation gaps? We've developed some good practice case studies and then a set of recommendations. And we held several roundtable events, a survey, and sort of desk-based research. So it really was a mixed methods approach. So we gathered lots and lots of insight through that process. And it's resulted in these 8 key findings. I'm not going to go through every single one of these today. I'll let you look at the report in detail for that. But I'm just going to highlight a few of those now. So one of the key findings was that delivering social value and infrastructure projects does have more complexity than, say, a housing project. They're often quite contentious. They've got long programs, loads of stakeholders. They can be linear in nature, so from the rail and the road projects that cross many geographical boundaries with different local needs and different priorities. And the infrastructure sector also suffers from negative public perception and low customer satisfaction, and a feeling that infrastructure is done sort of to people rather than for people. But the budgets and the geographical scale does mean that the benefits are really potentially very large. Lots of people talk about the barriers to social value. I'm sure that you've all come across some of these barriers as well. The top 3 that came out in the research are shown on the screen here. So the first one was about a lack of consistent definition and measurement. Lots of people interpret it in different ways, measure it in different ways, and it's causing quite a lot of confusion. And actually, the UK Green Building Council has now got a social value task force together to develop a common definition and sort of framework for social value in the built environment. And I'm part of that task force, and the work is underway. And just within a matter of months, hopefully, we would have reached some consensus on that, because actually, even within the task force, there's lots of different opinions and views on what it means and how it should be implemented. The second one was about lack of knowledge and skills, and that really was about knowledge and skills about how to create and deliver social value across the whole life cycle. And I think that the Supply Chain Sustainability School will have a really great role to play in that capacity building and building that knowledge and skills around this area. And the final one was about absence of leadership and ownership at the corporate and also at the project level. And in the survey that we did, only 41% of the respondents said that board level responsibility for social value has been defined. And in all the roundtable events, kind of leadership came through as being so important. It's vital, isn't it, to be able to deliver social value? And I think that's another area for improvement across the industry. Right, on to the next one. So social value really does need to be based on local needs, and we need to avoid picking sort of interventions just from a generic menu. So there are some various sort of tools out there which are really useful for helping you think about what your social value strategy might look like and what kind of interventions you might do. But it's important that you don't just pick from that menu and say, okay, we're going to do that one, and that one, and we might go for that one because it's going to give us a bit more sort of monetary social value. Really make sure it's based on local needs analysis and you really understand what that local community needs, and really identify which are your priority areas that you're going to focus on based on what aligns with your own corporate and sort of project vision, what you've got the capacity to deliver and actually, see through to the end as well. We need much more ambition and creativity. So in terms of ambition, having a social value strategy and some really defined outcomes is really important to guide the direction of the whole project. And we need to move beyond the usual sort of employment, apprenticeship and SME targets. And of course, they are incredibly important, but there is much more that can be done. So can you go beyond the easiest and cheapest towards the highest impact? Can you look beyond the red line boundary? Can you create partnerships with local charities who really understand the needs in the area, or procure from some creative social enterprises? And the image here is of Thames Tideway. So they've got a really fantastic range of social value interventions. So spanning employing people with convictions to developing partnerships with a local youth engagement charity to get people from minority backgrounds into rowing, and collecting about 100,000 sort of plastic bottles from the Thames. And there's plenty more information available online about the range of activities that they are implementing. And then one of the major findings was about this life cycle approach. So at the moment, the focus for social value is mainly during procurement and construction phases. And that's largely because procurement is the focus of the Social Value Act. But the research highlighted that there are opportunities at each stage of the project life cycle to create and deliver social value, but that those opportunities are being lost. And so I'm just going to pick out a few of those to discuss now. So starting right at the beginning, at the kind of strategic investment case stage, there was a really good quote here from a director at a major engineering consultancy. And he said, "We currently have a lack of joined up thinking and strategic planning between major infrastructure projects." And that was both across sectors and within the sectors themselves. And that's leading to a loss of social value in its broadest sense, due to inefficient spending of taxpayers' money and lost opportunities for collaboration on social value initiatives. And it really came out in the research that better infrastructure planning would ensure that those kind of opportunities to maximise wider social public benefits wouldn't be missed, and that new infrastructure projects, we know there's going to be a lot of investment in it, are developed in a much more integrated and joined up way that really maximises benefits for the UK as a whole. And then on the right hand side of the screen there, I've got the famous Green Book for this is used to analyse and appraise infrastructure investment and major project investment. And there were many flaws in that were highlighted, not just within my research, but it's very well known that it's not fit for purpose for major infrastructure schemes. It doesn't really take into account the wider regeneration benefits that can result. And it has very much an economic focus to that. And there is ongoing work actually by HM Treasury to revise that, the guidance on that, to make sure that the investment case really takes into account those and picks up all of those wider social benefits. And the Institution of Civil Engineers is actually also taking forward some work and producing a policy paper on appraising social value in the investment case. Right, on to design stage. So we do need a much stronger focus on identifying opportunities for social value creation at design stage. So really focusing on design can generate benefits for the local community right from the outset. It can also really help in public support and enhance the long-term value of the building or construction asset. So we know that it's important, but the majority of people in the survey said that social value is included in client design briefs poorly, and that there's been very little focus on the role of designers to date. Now, the Supply Chain Sustainability School and some other collaborators have produced a piece of guidance on creating social value through design, so that's worth a look at. And RIBA, as well as some other partners, have also produced a sort of social value toolkit for architects only in the last couple of months. So that's also worth having a look at if you're interested in the design stage. And then the image here this is a consultation that my organisation was involved in for the London 2012 Olympic Park. And the point of this image is to show that we need to go beyond sort of pure community consultation to much more about co-design and really developing solutions with the community and getting them involved and engaged at the earliest opportunity. Okay. Right, on to construction. As I said in the diagram with the life cycle impacts, most of social value activity in our sector at the moment is focused around the procurement and construction phases of projects. But actually, poor contract management was cited as one of the key reasons why commitments that are made at tender stage aren't actually getting delivered in practice. So companies will make great commitments and they're not actually being held to account to deliver them in practice. And Scape is a really good example of an organisation that's got very strong contract management processes in place. And Alison, I'm sure, will touch on that in her presentation when I finish mine. So I would say actually that high-profile projects where social value is one of the headline indicators is an exception to this rule, but broadly, much more can be done on contract management. And the image here is of a really great ex-offender training program called Bounce Back, which lots of contractors in the sector use. But really great initiative, worth a look if you want to find out more. I just wanted to touch on a case study from a major infrastructure project. So Hinkley Point C nuclear power station, in construction down in Somerset. It is a really complex infrastructure project, and it's one of the first nuclear power stations to be built here in 20 years. So there is no supply chain. They've had to build one. And the aim of that project, one of the outcomes is you've got the output of the nuclear power station, but one of the outcomes that they want to achieve is to really enhance prosperity in the southwest region. And they've awarded about 980 million contracts to businesses in that region. And yes, they've set targets to work with SMEs as well, but beyond just setting the target, they've actually put several measures in place to support SMEs to win contracts. So helping them to secure loans, giving them training, giving them advice on how to form consortiums, seconding some of the staff, changing payment terms, and EDF and Hinkley Point C have also partnered with the University of Bath to set up a supply chain innovation lab. And a lot of that work is about driving best practice, sharing best practice, and the social value side of things is very much integrated into that. So good work going on down there in Hinkley. Right, on to operations. So yeah, the majority of infrastructure assets have already been built. But yet the opportunities for ongoing social value creation over those many years, decades, are often overlooked. An example of an organisation in the infrastructure sector that's really pushed boundaries on this is Anglian Water. So, water company in the in East Anglia area of the UK in the east. They have really tackled a particular town. So, Wisbeach is a really deprived area in their sort of their water network area, and they have been working with their One Alliance partners to do some really fantastic things to address social needs in the area. And they've gone way beyond their kind of primary purpose as a water company to supply water and treat wastewater. They have really gone above and beyond, and Anglian Water have actually embedded social value into their articles of association. They've fundamentally embedded it into their business purpose. And I think that we'll hopefully see a shift to many more organisations also going down that route. And then we mustn't forget about decommissioning as well, actually. It's often overlooked. I haven't got a slide about it here, but if you're interested in that side of things, Sellafield's nuclear decommissioning programme, they've developed a social value strategy to make sure that the decommissioning stage is really going to develop social value for that area. So many contributors to this research really said that it would be useful for industry to have a best practice model for social value that the sector could work towards. So we've developed this social value maturity framework based on what you build, how you build, and how you operate. And I'm not expecting you to see the details there, but it's basically intended as a guide. So you can reflect on your maturity and you can use it to develop a social value strategy for a project. And this is not a sort of prescriptive or not a checklist. It really is just a framework to help you see where you might be at. Are you at the basic level? Are you best, or are you up high? Excuse me. Right, so finally on to the recommendations. There are 3 sets of recommendations in the report. I'll start with the first set, which is about kind of strategic recommendations, and investing in the right project came across really strongly, so that's top there. We also have a recommendation around embracing a broad view of social value beyond jobs and apprenticeships, and that touches on this need for more creativity and innovation, that there is much more that can be done in addition to those fundamental things. Delivering social value at all stages of the project lifecycle. Let's move beyond procurement and construction. There is much more opportunity, and also base those interventions on the local needs analysis. The recommendations that come under sort of section B were all about closing the implementation gap over that life cycle, and there are recommendations for national and local government, including having nationally significant infrastructure projects as a real exemplar for social value. For infrastructure clients, it was around leadership, defining those outcomes right up front and embedding it in the life cycle again. And for the supply chain, we need your creative and innovative solutions. We know you've got them. Bring them to the table, develop them in partnership with stakeholders, and let's make sure that they're actually followed through and implemented. And then tell people about it. Share good news, share what's been achieved, what are the lessons learned. And then finally, some supporting recommendations for the ICE and other institutions in the built environment sector as well, around the common definition, which I said has been taken forward. Guidance and upskilling, and then supporting consistency of approach. So I'm actually playing a bit of a facilitator role in getting various organisations to talk to each other about this agenda, which has been very interesting. And then finally, a call to action for all of you who might be involved in infrastructure or just construction projects in general, which is from Sadie Morgan, who did the forward in the report, she really says, let's make sure that all of us are involved in infrastructure planning, investment, design, delivery, from the whole life cycle. Let's take forward these findings of this research and make sure that social value is at the heart of infrastructure delivery and operation. And so I'm trying to continue that mantra and the call for action. You can download the report from our website. There's a link on the front page there. And I've got my contact details on the screen there. I'm always happy and willing to connect with people who are trying to tackle this area or who might have some complementary research or findings. Please do get in touch. Right, so that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Alison now. I'll turn my video off, Alison. Off you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Jo. So just to introduce myself, I'm Alison Ramsey. I'm the Social Value and Performance Manager for Scape. So myself and my team capture, collate and analyse all the performance data that comes in through all of our frameworks, and we work to design the performance measures and social value measures that go into our new frameworks as we procure them. So just a very brief bit about Scape itself. It's a public sector organisation, and we actually define ourselves by using the term social value because it's something that we've built into the way we work. It's something that we've just done since our inception. It's not always been known as social value, but since the Social Value Act came along and we were able to put a name to it, social value is what we do. As I said, we're a public sector organisation. We're owned by 6 local authorities that are across the bottom there, so they're our shareholders. They came together to seek the benefits of their joint ability to purchase on a larger scale. And now the construction frameworks that we have can be called off by any contracting authority, so that's any public body that's subject to the public procurement regulations that needs to procure in an ODU compliant way. They can call off of our frameworks. So these are our current frameworks. We have built environment consultancy services that's currently being reprocured, so that's with Perfect Circle at the moment. The new delivery partners will be announced for that particular consultancy framework in probably early December. We have our civil engineering framework, and our current partner for that is Balfour Beatty. We have our national construction, which covers major and principal works, Lend-Lease, Wilmot Dixon, Robertsons and Waits, and then minor works, which is currently with Kia, and we're currently just gone out to re-procure the entire construction framework, so that will encompass national and minor works in one go. And then we have our regional construction. So all of the others are UK-wide. Our regional construction framework covers a sort of central swathe of the UK, so that's East Anglia, East Midlands, and a part of West Midlands. So when we procure our frameworks, we actually build social value into the procurement process. So social value is part of the evaluation process, so it's cost, quality, and part of that quality is looking at social value. Do these partners have social value as part of their normal way of delivering their services? Is it built into just their business as usual? And we have quite stringent KPIs and requirements of them, so we need to know that they are able to commit to and deliver social value just as a matter of course. So when they become a delivery partner, they are required to meet these suite of KPIs. These run across all of our frameworks, and as you'll see, quite a number of them relate to social value anyway. So the local labour and spend, SME engagement and spend, waste diversion, all of those things feed into social value anyway. But in addition to that, we use the national TOMs as a way of quantifying the social value that's delivered through our frameworks. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the national TOMs, TOMs standing for themes, outcomes and measures. So down the left-hand side here, we have the themes talking about jobs, growth, social, environment and innovation. And then the other side, we have various outcomes that feed into those themes. And then there's a further column of numerous measures that can be undertaken in order to reach those outcomes. And as Jo mentioned, we need to avoid using this as a menu just to be ticked off, or looking at which provides the greatest proxy and just hitting those measures. It's not to be used in that way. The way we encourage our partners to use it is to use it as a tool to discuss with clients, to sit down at the very inception of the project and discuss what their needs are. If you're working with a client that has a social value policy or a strategy, or they have their own internal targets that they know that they need to meet, then it's looking at which of those particular measures suit that requirement and could be used, and what's possible on that project. And that's where the knowledge of the delivery partner comes in, because they know what they've been able to do elsewhere. They know what they're able to commit to and deliver in the time scale that's there. But I'll talk a bit more about that when I move on to the next bit. So as I mentioned, our civil engineering and infrastructure partner is Balfour Beatty, and this is how they respond to the social value requirements of the Scape frameworks. So they break it down into 5 key areas that they can focus on, and none of this will be of any surprise to anybody. These areas are familiar areas. But in order for them to focus the right amount of effort and time and resources, they break it down into these 5 areas to ensure that there's a wide range of social value that's covered. And Jo was talking about broadening out the response to social value, not just thinking about just apprenticeships or just local labour. You know, that there is a whole broad range of focus that can be given across the board, including legacy. So this is the approach that Balfour Beatty take to the Scape framework. Now, what I'm going to talk about after this is a case study, and just to say that what I talk about in the case study is what is particular to that particular project. So every case study will be different. Every social value delivery will be different for each individual project, but this delivery approach will be consistent. So this is how they approach it and what they do, the processes that they go through to ensure that they deliver on every project. But what the outcomes and the actual measures that are delivered will be different, because they'll be bespoke to every project. So Jo's report pointed out that the activities need to commence in inception. Balfour Beatty have definitely recognised this, and their social value action plan starts right at the outset, right at the beginning. They will be looking at what can be delivered and drawing up a plan to make sure that it's built into the delivery of the project. It's not an afterthought. It's not something that you think of halfway through the project. Wouldn't it have been great if we could have? It's thought of right at the beginning, and it's planned. Identification of delivery vehicles, again, this is something that Joe talked about. It's about partnering. It's about partnering with local organisations that are experts in the field. Things like the Prince's Trust, Step Together, Bounce Back, Community Wood Recycling, whatever those local organisations are that can deliver those particular needs in that area. Balfour Beatty are experts at civil engineering. They're not necessarily experts at, I don't know, wood recycling or working with NEETs or ex-offenders. But if they can identify a local organisation that is an expert in that area, then they can partner with them and ensure that that's delivered well through that project. Reporting and monitoring. Now, we don't want to make an industry out of people collecting data and reporting data. So we want to keep this as simple and as streamlined as possible. But we also recognise that what gets reported gets done, and that you need to capture as much as you can. Two reasons for that. One is the monitoring. So we want to make sure that any targets that have been set or any promises and commitments that have been made are being delivered. But also the reporting side of it is really crucial, because Joe talked about the implementation gap. And I'm sure that is a case there. There is an implementation gap, but there's also a perception of a gap, because lots of things go unreported. Things get done, and it's just, oh, well, that's just a nice thing that we did. It's what we always do. It's not something that we consider to be social value. So reporting and monitoring is really crucial for us. And like I say, Scape, my team, that's what we do. We capture and report that data to make sure that our partners are delivering on all the promises that they made in their commitments when they became a Scape partner. Understanding the customer's drivers, this is absolutely key, really, and this goes back to the not making it a tick box exercise or just picking up of a menu of outcomes. When you're working with a client that has a social value policy or strategy, it makes our lives much easier, because they've got a clear idea of what they want. But not all clients are in that situation. Some of them know they need social value, but they don't really know what they can ask for, or how far they can go, or what they can do. And this is where the expertise of the delivery partner really comes to fruition, because they can tell them exactly what's possible, what they can do, what they've done in the past, and work together to build upon that to meet those customers' drivers. Local needs analysis. So this again goes back to where you come up to a client that doesn't really have a social value strategy or policy in place. Balfour Beatty do an awful lot of research in the area that they're going to. They do a local needs analysis, and they use the indices of multiple deprivation to ensure that when they go to that client, they're already informed. They already know as much about that area as the client does. They'll have a good, clear idea of what's needed and work with the client to come up with solutions for those issues. And finally, identification of local supply chain, SMEs and social enterprises. Scape has KPIs on this that requires them to use local supply chain. They won't always have them on their supply chain when they go to a new area. So it's a case of going out to the market, making sure that the SMEs are aware of the opportunities that are available for them, and assisting them through some of the red tape that there often is that puts the smaller social enterprises and SMEs from joining the supply chain. So helping them to get through the process of getting on the supply chain. So on to the case study itself. This project was completed by Balfour Beatty through Scape's National Civil Engineering Infrastructure Framework, and it was to construct the Springhead Bridge on behalf of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation, who are currently building the Garden City in North Kent that consists of around 15,000 homes. This key piece of strategic infrastructure links Springhead Park to Ebbsfleet International Station, giving residents only a 7-minute walk to the station, saving nearly 20 minutes on their journey time, unnecessary car journeys and parking fees. It's 87 metres long, it has 2 vehicle lanes, a footpath and a cycle path. So the bridge itself will deliver a legacy of reduced emissions and improved quality of life for local residents. The project has already won numerous awards, including Constructing Excellence, Considerate Constructor, and a Green Apple Environment Award. Balfour Beatty and their supply chain met such a wide range of social value measures, it's difficult to know which ones to highlight here. But these are impressive results, including the percentage spend with local subcontractors and SMEs, and a very high Considerate Constructor scheme score. By using the national TOMs, we can calculate a value of 6.3 million generated in social value, which equates to 46% of the project value. I guess the main thing to note here is that none of this happens without a great deal of planning and coordination and a really good client relationship to understand what's important to them. If I start with the employment and skills in the grey box, over 2,500 students were engaged with, ranging from the local primary to the Royal School of Military Engineering and the University of Greenwich. Engagement included careers fairs, STEM talks, site visits, and bridge building sessions. So it was very much that it was geared to whichever age range and which was age appropriate to the students that were involved. Obviously, we hope that this has raised awareness and will sow the seed and lead to an increase in construction careers. But what we do know is that 2 of the 26 work experience students have now been taken on as apprentice quantity surveyors. So that's made a positive impact on their lives. And there were 10 new job opportunities created for local people on the scheme. There was also a high level of training and development achieved on the scheme for staff, operatives, and stakeholders. In terms of community engagement, Balfour Beatty created a community newsletter to keep the neighbours informed on progress, and this included links to drone footage of works on site, which I think is a really great way to keep local residents interested in and informed. And as Jo mentioned earlier, keeping them informed is just one side of the story. It needs to be engagement. It needs to have local people need to have a voice and to be able to be heard and involved in the scheme. Topsoil and materials were donated to a local school and a local community garden project, which teaches skills to volunteers. There was also 88 hours of fundraising initiatives for local charities and the football club. I guess infrastructure projects have the greatest potential for environmental impact and so also offer a great opportunity. Balfour Beatty recognise this and take this area very seriously, reducing vehicle movements where possible, using recycled crushed concrete and reducing the carbon footprint through solar tower lights and lean generators. With an ecologist employed on site, work was programmed to avoid impact on the bird nesting season and to protect the abundance of wildlife in the area, which continues to thrive. I recently heard social value likened to an unwanted Christmas present, well-intentioned but not really what's needed. The only way to overcome this is through good dialogue with the right people in the client organisation and connections to people with local knowledge to focus delivery on local needs rather than what's easy to deliver. I think it's clear from this case study that the social value delivery needs to be planned into the scheme from the start and not as an afterthought or an add-on. And whilst the data is vital to evidence that targets have been met, it's the stories of how people's lives have been affected that makes the most impact. I've included contact details for Sophie Goddard here from Balfour Beatty, as I've spoken on her behalf throughout this presentation. And if anyone wants any further details on the Springhead Bridge project, there's a really great detailed case study on the Scape website that I would suggest that you go over to and have a look at the challenges and things that were overcome and the more technical details. They're all included on that over there. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alison and Jo. A really inspiring set of examples there, which has prompted quite a few questions. So if I can kick off, there seems to be quite a lot of interest. There's several questions on the local needs analysis. So is there a specific tool that's recommended to undertake local needs analysis? Can you provide more information about the local needs analysis referred to under Balfour Beatty's approach, please? This process is one of the more challenging aspects to make meaningful to us. So I don't know if either of you would like to expand a little bit on local needs analysis and how you might do it and what tools you might use.
I start from a generic point of view, and then Alison, if you pick up any specifics related to it. So yeah, it is a really important tool. It really provides a profile of the community as it is now, but also their future needs. And it's important that it's undertaken at the really sort of early stages of a project, and it should feed into the brief for the whole thing. And most of the times it's led by a client, but as Alison mentioned, often contractors will carry out their own needs analysis, and specialist consultants might be procured to do it. I'm not aware of a particular tool for doing it. It's more like a little study that you do. So you can get the data from local authorities. So the indices of vulnerable population, it's got data against a whole host of different indicators. So, what's childhood obesity like in the area? What's school attainment like? What's the unemployment or employment? Is it the youth that are really suffering from unemployment? And also quite a few local authorities are starting to do analysis against the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's also a really useful framework where there are areas that really need to be controlled. I would say local charities are also really good at knowing what the local needs are. And then I mentioned about doing the community consultation, actually going beyond a desk-based study and going out and talking to people, residents and businesses, young people, old people, getting lots of different views. So it can be quite a big exercise, but I think for SMEs, you could do something light touch and desk-based. Get data, you'll soon see what the needs are in that area. Alison, you might have some more to add to that.
Yeah, no, I would have said the same thing as you. I'm not aware of what specific tools are used. I think it is just a case of a bit of background research, some of which can be desktop, looking at those sort of things that you mentioned that are online. But I think there's no substitute for actually getting in touch with some local community groups. The local authorities may have some ideas as well, but I think, like you said, local charities, local groups, they will have a great idea of what's needed and what they're trying to achieve themselves, and maybe put you in touch with other third sector groups and organisations in that area. And that's the key thing, is that it needs to be specific to that area. It's not a generic thing. Yeah.
So I think this reinforces what you both said about social value not being a kind of a tick box exercise. So the very fact that there isn't a tick box framework for local needs analysis suggests that actually you need to do your homework, and there are some nuances for specific areas. And the other message that I'm picking up loud and clear for this, local people understand what local needs are, and you need to talk to them. It feels like there isn't a kind of a magic bullet for this to deliver.
That's right, Sean. I think that's right. And local needs change actually as well. I mean, an analysis that was taken 2 years ago would look very different to what it would look like today. So I think, and recognising the changing needs of communities and making sure it's up to date is also really important in that.
Okay, thank you. There's a question for Joe, but I guess it could apply to both of you. Are there tools available for helping SMEs to measure and record social values to produce a meaningful report at the end of a project?
Yes, lots. And that's actually one of the problems, is choosing which one to go to. So Alison mentioned the TOMS framework, and that's a really good, simple starting point. They've got a spreadsheet. You don't have to pay. It's not high tech. You can do it yourself. So yeah, have a look at the TOMS sort of framework, and the social value portal have also got various tools that you can use. And there are some more sophisticated ones that major projects use. So impact reporting is one that I'm aware of in particular, and it's kind of live. So anyone who's delivering a social value initiative can, get on their phone and right, this is what we've done this week, and it gets uploaded, and you can have dashboards, and it's quite sophisticated. So and that's just one example. There are many others available. But I would say, as for an SME, perhaps start with the TOMS calculator and see how you go, and then if you want to develop and go a bit further, then you can.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Yeah, well, the reason why we chose to go with the Social Value Portal as National TOMS is because it is very transparent. It's downloadable for free, so anyone can use it. Then that means that we're all using the same measurement. Then you can compare like with like. There's no mystery to it. There's nothing hidden. There's no hidden agenda. All the proxy values are there for you to see. And like you say, it's very simple. It's just a case of, X times Y equals Z. It's just literally the number of things times the proxy unit equals the value. They're updated each year. This year's the 2020 TOMS. There's a much longer list than there was previously. So it covers absolutely everything that you can think of that could be considered social value. They have found a proxy value to it. So I would suggest going to the Social Value Portal and having a look at that. It's very simple and straightforward to download that. The other option is, looking at the impact that it's had on people. So it would be a case of doing a survey at the start and a survey at the finish and saying, what difference has this made to your lives? Are you feeling happier? Are you feeling differently about things now to how you were before? And is it positive or negative? Because there's negative impacts as well as positive. But we went with the TOMS because we felt that that's something we can apply to every project across the whole of the country, regardless of what it is. And it's not subjective like surveys can be.
Well, actually, just a couple of other things spring to mind, actually. So a lot of social value is about putting a monetary value on all of this. But I think, as Alison said, the stories are just as important as that, kind of numerical data, the impact that it's had on people's lives. So making sure that you're capturing those as well is really important. And something that came out related to measurement and data in the research was the kind of wide distrust, I guess, in the data. There's lots of different methodologies and approaches, and auditing. It's not yet quite as sophisticated as some of the other kind of sustainability themes when it comes to auditing and verifying and say, yes, this is actually your actual figures. So I think as a sector, we've got a bit of work to do on that as well.
I'd certainly agree with that from my perspective as well, because we work quite a lot in this space. Where we have a live issue with a client that I can't name at the moment, where we've measured, or we've had contractors measure a year's worth of social value data through our cloud-based system that we use. And the initial monetization for that was of the order of 1.2 million. Once it was audited, it was less than a tenth of that. So these tools are really subject to interpretation, and to the point about the contract management that Alison mentioned, and verified, and really holding your subcontractors to account around these things. That there are various honest or semi-honest interpretations of of some of the data that, when it's looked at carefully, could end up providing a very different picture. So yeah, it's a bit of confusion out there, but good that people like Green Building Council are trying to pick up the challenge as well. Another question then, a bit more generic. How do we get government and large infrastructure to expand their scopes to provide a broader, more beneficial solution beyond maybe just a road, train line, etc., so it engages with local regional development or travel, for instance? I think this is to your point, Joe, about the sort of breadth of thinking around social value, and how the Green Book isn't really fit for purpose, and how do we move things forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really big issue, but it is definitely I'd say an issue that's increasing in kind of awareness, and major infrastructure clients are really now, particularly in light of COVID, recognizing that they have got a huge role to play in reducing some of the kind of major inequalities across the country, and that the construction sector has a big role to play in that. So yes, the Green Book, it is very much focused on economic business case at the moment. There is a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that it can capture those broader sort of almost got the good dynamic effects, the kind of the regeneration benefits that result of these projects, which aren't sort of currently captured. And it might mean that some schemes actually do look more more viable and might deliver more benefits than others. So yes, I know that the Treasury are working to improve guidance on that, and I think clients and any other advisors that are involved in that stage, it's going to be a bit of a shift, I think, in approach, just to try and capture those. Alison, you might have some perspectives from the sort of client side.
Well, I think central government is moving very slowly, like a huge tanker turning round, but it is going towards more than just considering social value and actually evaluating it in its larger scale projects going forward. So that's a positive move. It's been a long time coming, and I think actually some of the local authorities do better than central government does in terms of delivering the social value in the projects they have. Maybe because they know the value of things. Their purse strings are so tight that they have to squeeze every last drop of benefit out of everything that they build. I think maybe that's something that local government is pretty good at. In terms of the sort of broadness of social value that is delivered, it's a case of meeting the needs and thinking innovatively as to ways of delivering it differently, I guess, isn't it? And bringing new innovative ways to the table, and then clients being brave enough to actually take that step and saying, yeah, we will do that, and thinking about the positive publicity that might bring.
Yeah, it is very much a client driver, isn't it? Because I think you both mentioned in different ways the temptation of contractors to find the cheapest way possible to delivering the biggest possible number on the national TOMs, or whatever portal you tend to use. And I'd kind of equate that a little bit with schemes like BREEAM for buildings, where contractors and designers are inclined to go for the cheapest points they can get, rather than necessarily the best value that they can achieve. But there's something in there about being an intelligent client and trying to look at things in a broader sense. I've got another question here. Is it possible to anticipate and implement actions to address the future local needs as well? Have you got a crystal ball, either of you?
Interesting. I mean, it's really important, isn't it? Particularly when buildings and infrastructure.
It is about future-proofing, isn't it? Seriously.
Yeah. And I think once the thing's been built, it's having ownership over that, and then making sure that you've got measures and local ownership to really increase that social value. But maybe you can do a future gazing session if you were going to do a community consultation and really say, look, what do we think the people of the future will want from this development or this infrastructure project?
I think we all kind of felt that perhaps if you'd asked us this question in January or February time, we'd have said, yes, we know exactly what we want. We want to combat climate change. We want to get rid of single-use plastics. Yeah. Those are our key priorities. That's really important. And then COVID came and sort of knocked us all for six. And all of those priorities seem to be taking a bit of a back seat at the moment. So I think it's really quite crucial that we get back onto that and remember just how vital the climate emergency is, and that we start to consider that again, put that back at the top of the agenda again, once we've kind of found our feet and got ready for got used to the new COVID conditions that we're all working under.
Okay, thank you. You would have seen on your screens a green thing has popped up asking you to share feedback that you have on the session. Please do click on it and share your feedback with us. It's very important that you do that. You can continue to listen to the conversation while you're doing the feedback, but it's very good if we can gather feedback from our people attending. Alison, if I can take liberty with a couple of questions for you. You mentioned in your presentation that you have social value is part of the quality measure that you include in your tender evaluations. Roughly what percentage would you include in your tender evaluation against social value, and how do you judge whether a contractor that's bidding is offering better social value between one or another?
Well, because the way we are tendering frameworks rather than one particular project. If you're tendering for a specific project, you know exactly what the needs are for that project in that area. We have to think about projects that are going to be delivered over a 4-year period over the whole of the UK. So we can't say what those specific social value needs are for each project in those various different geographical areas. So we have to be a little bit more generic than that. So in our quality assessment, we're looking not for quantitative figures, if you like. We're not looking for numbers. We're looking at methods of operation, of how they would deliver it, of how they would bring innovation to it, how set up they are for monitoring and recording it. So it's looking at whether this is just part of your normal operation, or whether building social value into what you do would be a big step for you. And if you're the sort of organisation that already has reporting, monitoring, recording in place, it's something that you've got a track record of delivering over the past however many years, it's something that's built into your whole organisation, from the operative at the gate to the managing director at the top. If it runs through your business as something that's delivered as per usual, then that's how you would be evaluated through our framework evaluation process.
Yeah, so you're expecting to see somebody doing this as business as usual rather than doing something specific just because you've asked for it.
Yeah, which makes my life much easier when they become a partner, because you're leaning against an open door here. These people are already used to, they're all set up to deliver social value. They've been doing it for years. They are of a like mind to us, and on all of our partners on our framework come from that same mindset of this is just something that we do as per usual. So it makes my life much easier when we're saying to them, how much social value have you delivered? Have you met these KPIs this quarter? What's your achievement? And actually they smash it every time, because that's just what they do. It's how their organisation is set up to deliver work.
Okay, anything to add, Jo?
Yeah, well, actually, because procurement, I didn't touch on it in the presentation slides today, but there is a section on it in the report, and through the research, it came out that the weighting, you mentioned the weighting, Sean, it's definitely increasing. Seeing a shift now towards 10% kind of social value, and then 10% more kind of sustainability, carbon and circular economy kind of elements. So definite rebalance, much more balanced scorecard being introduced. But it also came through quite strongly about this need to sort of focus on outcomes. So Alison mentioned about outcomes, and not just necessarily how many apprenticeships are you going to deliver, but how are you going to make sure that they actually develop into proper career progression, opportunities, and it's not just about delivering numbers, but much more broader outcomes. And an upskilling needed, actually, because this is an emerging area for lots of people. Let's get right training in place for the people who are setting the questions, evaluating the questions, to make sure that they're asking the right ones. I've been as a consultant, been asked to demonstrate how we're providing social value before, and some of the questions that they're asked, this is completely irrelevant to what the scope of the contract is. So others have had a similar experience. So yes, a bit of a shift needed in upskilling on procurement.
Okay, thank you. Another question that I know vexes a lot of organisations, and Alison, I'm interested in your view. You mentioned several times about local procurement and local employment. When you look at procurement, how do you define local? Well, what's a local supplier to you?
Yeah, so we have bands of 10, 20 and 40 miles. So we look at all those three radius as part of our KPIs, but we also allow clients to set their own if they need to. So, for example, Nottingham City Council, they're only interested in those organisations that have an NG1 postcode, for example. Birmingham City, although they border lots of other areas, they're only interested in Birmingham City postcodes. So local to us is, like I say, is a radius of 10, 20 or 40 miles, and we'll look at the percentage of labour within those particular bands, but we allow clients also to set their own if they need to.
So is it based, if you look at a supplier, is that based on their head office address? How do you define that postcode?
It's on the local delivery office that's delivering to the site. So you're looking at emissions, transport, road usage, that sort of thing, as well as where the money is going into the local economy.
So it's where the contract is being serviced from,
Yes.
rather than the the head office contribution.
Head office, yeah.
I had a wonderful question from a client the other day who they had a consultant that was doing the work in London, but their head office was in Manchester, in quite a deprived area of Manchester. So could they put all that value in Manchester because that's where the head office is? No, really not. That's where the contract is being serviced from. Okay, I think we're near enough out of time. So I'd just like to try and firstly to thank our two speakers for a really inspirational session, and to those in the audience for joining in. I think we've had near enough 100 people on the call at peak today, so thank you all for getting involved. This is a subject that's going to run and run. We are looking at running a session on social value monetization, either last week in October or first week in November, where we're going to get Dr. Daniel Fujiwara along from Symmetrica, who's an expert in this subject, to get more into this subject, because we do find that it's an area of continuing development, as both of you have said. So do keep an eye on the Supply Chain School website for future events. And thanks to both of our speakers and to our audience for a fantastic session today. It will be recorded and up on the site for those who didn't manage to attend today. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.